This is my copy of Superman the Golden Age Volume 1, a collection of Superman's earliest stories from Action Comics and his first ever solo series. I remember using almost an entire month's allowance just to purchase it, and being so excited to delve into the past of one of my favorite comic book characters. Over the next 2 to 3 months, it would be the comic I brought to places the most, but not for the reason you'd think. Because I was young and not exposed to older American superhero comics, I went into the paperback thinking it would be some kind of masterpiece because it featured the first appearances of Superman, the character whose explosive first appearance created an entire genre of comics and spawned the superhero phenomenon that has come to dominate modern pop culture today. I remember being charmed, but mostly underwhelmed when I read the first story. I mean, of course I felt that way after having such lofty expectations going into it. Superman's early stories served as a foundation, a new format for other people to improve upon over the course of time, rather than a unique and distinct masterpiece that can never be replicated. There are things about it that I find interesting to this day, like Lois Lane being an absolute jerk to Clark Kent, taking advantage of and dismissing him at almost every chance she gets, which is something I didn't expect at all going into the book. The shenanigans Superman gets himself into are also super wacky, whether it's joining a failed circus to save its passionate owner, or impersonating a football player to win a rigged game. It's also kind of cool to see a set of Superman stories where he doesn't fight aliens and monsters, but instead helps human beings from corrupt systems and individuals. But even though Superman the Golden Age Volume 1 had some interesting elements and was quite charming at points, the comic lost its luster and got stale over time for me. It was a comic I appreciated more than I actively enjoyed reading, if you get what I mean. After multiple attempts to make progress by taking it with me to relatives' houses, restaurants, and other places I've already forgotten, I ended up quitting. This comic just didn't grab me. It didn't hook me the way that a lot of comics I love do. That's okay. Not all types of art are for me, and I don't think Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster planned these stories to be binged in a collected format. Today, I'm not going to delve deep into this comic book story or even talk about its wider impact on the comic book industry. For the first time, instead of analyzing art, I'm going to talk about my personal copy of it, the few memories it triggers, the weird but incredibly fitting transformation of its pages, and what physical art means to me. When I look at this comic today, I'm reminded of a few things. Because I brought it to a bunch of different places, I have a few memories associated with it. The first being a restaurant in a mall that my family used to go to that exploded or something. I can't even find it anymore on Google, but it was this Hong Kong-based restaurant that we loved eating noodle soup in. One unique thing about their beef noodle soup was their inclusion of radish, which I don't think I've seen in any other beef noodle soup since. And yeah, I heard from my family that there was an accident in the restaurant that caused it to close down. There's speculation that it was intentional to get some insurance money before the restaurant was planning to close down, but I don't want to be that kind of guy in a video like this. It was also at that restaurant where I realized how often I brought that book to places. I remember a relative saying something along the lines of, "Oh, you're still reading that?" Which was one of the things that led me to decide to stop reading the book. I also distinctly remember someone spilling a bit of their drink on it one time, and being initially worried what it might do to the book. But in hindsight, it might be one of the reasons why it's so pretty now. It might just be me, but I really like how my copy of this volume looks as of today. Specifically how its foredge, this part of the book, has yellowed over the years. If you look at YouTube reviews or photos showcasing Superman the Golden Age Volume 1 online, you can see that this side of the comic isn't supposed to look like the one my copy has. But because of a multitude of factors, the humidity and heat of Southeast Asia, the dampness that a spilled drink brings, and the inevitable passage of Father Time, the book looks like this now. I think it's perfect. The comic still feels great, by the way. The images inside are crisp and clear, the pages are still firm, and have the same newsprint-like texture and look that make it feel historical, but the distorted coloring on the edge of the pages that have appeared over time and are slowly seeping into the interior pages have made the physical look of the comic parallel the nature and origin of the stories it is telling. The yellowing of its pages makes the book look and feel like an antique, a relic of the past. And aren't those qualities in line with what this early version of Superman is all about? This is a fun case of time molding the physical aspect of a book to further match the interior, and I think it might have an effect on my enjoyment of it. Over the years, the stories in this book have not changed, but a physical aspect of it changing has resulted in a more immersive experience when reading it now. I've been rereading this book again for this video, and I just feel more immersed in the world of the comic. Maybe I like it a little more now because I'm older and don't have as high of an expectation going into it, but I think the comic's wear and tear over the years have made me slightly more engaged with its story. As a person who's an advocate for digital art for the sake of accessibility and convenience, I'm kind of reminded through this comic that the tangibility of a piece of art is important too, as it can shape the way we interact and perceive a piece of media. This Superman comic is not special to me, but because of its physical presence, it has more significance than it would have if I bought the comic digitally. There are also a bunch of other art that I love more because I have physical copies of them. Last year, I read It's Lonely at the Center of the Earth by Zoe Thorogood for a comic book club, and I loved it. This year, I found the book at a major bookstore chain, and I bought it for a little less than cover price. But what made my appreciation of the book grow wasn't my reread of the book. It was seeing how much other people loved it too. I lent this to my two sisters, and both of them gobbled the entire comic in a single sitting. That's how moving and engaging this suicidal autobiography of a struggling artist really is. The novel I've finished the fastest is David Levithan and John Green's hilarious and heartwarming book, Will Grayson, Will Grayson, which I finished within the span of 10 days. I know that might be slow for some, but finishing a whole book in 10 days is razor quick for me. And the reason for that record time was because I had the book in physical form. I was taking driving lessons around that time, and this book accompanied me throughout the long wait times those sessions had. Because the environment allowed me to truly immerse myself in the book, I eventually got hooked on chapter 3 and never looked back. Oh, that fly. If I had a digital copy of the book instead of a physical one, I might never have had the patience to push through with it, since I could have moved on to other digital books or comics. But because of my circumstances at the time, combined with the fact that I had a physical copy of the book, Will Grayson became a novel I really came to enjoy, and it's also probably one of my favorite pieces of media that heavily features queer characters. Listening to Owl City's sugary electropop album Ocean Eyes in 2019 was a magical experience that sucked me into the medium of music, which I am now deeply enjoying. I remember listening to it for the first time in awe, thinking to myself, music can sound like this? The record's catchy hooks, colorful synths, and descriptive lyrics filled with abstract imagery, bring me to fantastical places with fluffy clouds and sparkling rainbows. Although it isn't critically revered by most music buffs, it holds a special place in my heart. And having the album also be the first ever audio CD I ever purchased with my own money feels like my relationship with it coming full circle. This is not a video advertising everyone to exclusively get physical art, but I do think there is significance to a piece of art being in physical form. Not only is physical art a tangible representation of our interests that can reflect certain periods of our lives and express who we are to others, but it allows us to engage with art in a deeper and richer way. There's a kind of magic that art being in physical form can bring. Whether it's the deep satisfaction of lending a graphic novel that changes a person's perspective, the rush of excitement when finally adding one of your favorite albums to start your audio CD collection, or the little bout of joy obtained from the yellowing pages of a golden age comic book. My name is Joshua C, and I will see you in the next one. Digitally, of course. I can't show up to your house, and I would not want to.